Hello everybody and welcome back, where today we have a bit of somber news for VR and PSVR2 in general regarding a certain game, but also a little bit of hope at the end of it, and hope that I didn't expect really to be there and I hoped would be there for the studio behind Zenith: The Last City. A VR MMO that really pushed beyond its boundary and pushed beyond further than it had any right to go because of the size of this team and the developers behind it and their passion. So today we're going to talk about that, where Zenith is at right now, its unfortunate sunsetting plans for the future, whether the servers will stay up, the developers' journey through the game, and where they're going to go next. So don't go anywhere because today's one is going to take a little explaining. But before we jump in, we have just hit 10k subs. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to do so by subbing. It's the best way to show support, and seeing that little number go up every day, honestly, is just, it fills my heart stupidly. But anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble. Let's get on to the news about Zenith and its unfortunate cancelling of content. At the start of this year, if I remember right, Ramen VR, the studio behind Zenith: The Last City, put out a statement that they were taking their VR MMO and pivoting towards a free-to-play model. This was because players simply weren't sticking around and weren't playing enough of the main game. Players would stick around for a month and then move on, so they wanted to kind of incite players to play and encourage new players to join in by developing this little free-to-play mode called Zenith Infinite Realms, which would have content every month or so in the form of seasons to provide stimulation for the player base with constant raids, weapons, and things to unlock. Unfortunately, this didn't go the way that they'd hoped. Player numbers, and recurring player numbers more importantly, continued to decline despite Infinite Realms launching, and I actually covered that on the channel. I wasn't completely blown away by it, to be honest. It felt like a very shallow version of the main game, which I guess it was supposed to be, but this side game from the main one was their new focus point, so it really wasn't looking good. They'd already stopped doing content for Zenith: The Last City at this point, I think, but now all content towards Infinite Realms and The Last City is going to stop. The game is going to be sunsetted, essentially, except the servers will stay up for as long as they can support them and as long as there are people to play. The devs put out a video talking about the situation, their humble beginnings as two developers wanting to make a VR MMO, to growing into a larger team, to seeing player numbers spike massively during the Kickstarter and the launch of the game, and then unfortunately fall off as time progressed. Players simply weren't sticking around, and it's rough to see this happen because Zenith has a lot of potential, and a VR MMO, I mean, I don't need to tell you, has a massive amount of potential. Imagine World of Warcraft in VR. I mean, people imagine the show Sword Art Online as the gold standard for what VR eventually will be with MMOs, and to be honest, I think we can get there, but unfortunately, Zenith just wasn't that. It had a myriad of issues, one of them being quite overwhelming for new players, issues with geometry and collision, the combat being a bit janky, some of the movement being a bit janky, and the constant struggle for getting loot always being something that kind of felt like a bit more of a hindrance than a fun gameplay loop. So the developers have decided to stop providing content for the game while keeping the servers up, but luckily they have not faced bankruptcy due to Zenith's decline, which is what honestly I was afraid would happen. These guys have had some really good ideas, and even though the execution hasn't been amazing in my opinion, I'm hoping they can pursue more projects forward and make something even more polished to build upon, even more than Zenith was. It's unclear what they're going towards in the future, but if you have paid for any tiers, say on Kickstarter or Patreon or anything towards the game, you will get rewards in future Ramen VR titles. We're unclear what that is, but yeah, they should come eventually. However, I know this probably stings for a lot of players who invested time and money into Zenith to see it decline like this, and sure enough, that has been echoed in the Zenith VR Reddit especially. As this video was posted there, a lot of players were asking them to sell it to somebody who can actually make and run a game. That is a direct quote from the Reddit page. People do not seem to be happy, although Reddit is not the happiest of places sometimes. But people do point out a lot of issues that have been left in the game and reasons why players dropped off, like not finishing a lot of content, being massive holes and issues with geometry around the game, the netcode being really rough, and a myriad of other issues. And while Ramen VR did fix a lot of issues popping up in the game, I do agree they didn't quite do enough to polish it up to make it accessible to a wider audience. And I know that's kind of the big scary phrase in the VR gaming world and the gaming world, is that you shouldn't really appeal to a wider audience because then you'll please no one. But it was at the point where nobody in a wider audience could really get invested into the game because it was slightly unapproachable, and I felt that way quite a few times as well. It doesn't seem like they're selling The Last City off to any companies, it's just going to sit there and rot, unfortunately. I am still excited for the future of Ramen VR and where they go, but I can see some people echoing the statement in the Reddit and in Discord saying that they're not going to be buying any more Ramen VR titles due to the issues still left with Zenith before they pulled the plug. Overall though, there is a glimmer of hope in this with the future games, whatever they come out with, but it is quite a sad and depressing day for Ramen VR and Zenith, because a lot of players, they genuinely love this game and feel like they were a little bit betrayed by the devs. I'm not really too educated about this, I'm just echoing what the community has been saying online. If you enjoyed Zenith, please do let me know in the comments below. I did enjoy my time with it and honestly found myself having fun in its world, but it was just that unapproachable that I couldn't really get too invested into it by being overwhelmed with too many mechanics and things going on and quest lines. Anyway, that's all we got to talk about today with Zenith and Ramen VR. Let me know what you think of this again down in the comments below. Thank you to our patrons and YouTube members who are the reason you're seeing these videos day after day and week after week. Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Zeke Merzer, Ace Gamer, Hippie Pickle, Jin007, A License to Chill, Sun, WTF, Piosco, and Fat Controllers. If you want to join the Patreon, YouTube membership, or Discord, all those links are down below, the last of which is free. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.